Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to this masterclass, A New Beginning. I'm so excited for this to be my first masterclass of 2022 and to welcome in nature's new year. And I'll talk a little bit more in a moment about what that means exactly. And I would love for this to be as interactive as you desire it to be. So, for all of you that are here live, you can write questions and comments in the chat as I'm speaking. And for everyone that's on the replay, if you have any questions or anything, you can send me a message afterwards and I will get back to you. We're going to begin just with a little opening attunement, a little meditation. It will just be a couple of minutes. So take a moment to get yourself comfortable. You may like to just place your hands on your belly or maybe on your heart space or one on each. And just take a moment to close down your eyes, go inwards from any distractions in the outer world, and take in a few deep breaths. Breathing in through the nose, and a slow and gentle exhale out through the nose. And with those exhales, really let the shoulders drop down, let the hips soften, unclench through the jaw, or anywhere else you're holding on to tension. Breathe and invite life into your body with your inhale. And just bringing your awareness to your head, your mind, and inviting in the energy and activating the energy with yourself of an open mind. You may visualize your mind opening. And then energy moves down through the mind into the heart space. And I just want you to soften all of that energy, all of that space around your heart with your breath. Soft heart, an open mind. Now moving the awareness of your breath to the core of your belly, to your center. And just take this little moment to feel that connection to the wisdom that is deep within you. And this wisdom is reflected in the universe and the world all around you. And it is within you. Connected belly, soft heart, and open mind. Just take a couple more deep breaths. And you may like to take this moment to set an intention for yourself. What is your intention for being here right now in this moment? It could be to receive, to feel activated, to connect with yourself. Use your own words and your own intention. And when you're ready, just gently crack open your eyes, or you may like to leave them closed while you listen to me, completely up to you. And just ground yourself, preparing to receive this transmission that I have to offer you today. So today we're going to cover the transit of the 41st Jinky that will be entering tomorrow. I'll talk about what that means, and really attuning to this new cycle and this new start of an energetic and new year by nature's energetic standards. I'll talk more about the Jinkies as well. I know that a lot of you here have already had a lot of experience and exposure with the Jinkies, but for those that are new, I'll cover the basics a little later on as well. I want to talk about your individual coding and using that to really enrich your experience of 2022 and beyond, the experience of your everyday life and the life that you're living, whether that is in your home, in your business, all realms of life. And at the end, I will share a little bit about the Jinkies offers that I currently have, including my 2 group programs that will be launching today. So I'll just share a little bit about all of that at the end. First off, who am I? I know a lot of you that have registered already, but there are a few new names and a few new faces. So I'm so excited to meet you. And for everyone I do know, I'm so excited that you're here choosing to be with me now. So my name is Rachel White. You've seen that already went through your process of registering. And I work with women to expand their experience of creativity, pleasure, and ease, and the Jinkies. I am a coach, author, speaker, podcaster, and Jinkies guide. And there are so many different things I have done. If you're familiar with like the Jinkies or human design, I have a lot of line 3s. I experiment a lot. Life is a real adventure for me. So I've done so many different things, but all of it has really been from this deep place of wanting to connect women in deeper with who they truly are and what they truly want and how they truly want to live. And usually that is deeply connected with ease and pleasure and joy and creativity for the women that are drawn to work with me anyway. And I would love to hang out with you more. If you're not already, you can follow me on Instagram at by Rachel White. Give me a follow and send me a message, and I will definitely follow you back if I'm not already. I would love to connect with you more and to find out more about you. And you can find out a lot more about me from my Instagram or by just reaching out. I would love to chat. For my experience with the Jinkies, I've been exploring the Jinkies for a little over 18 months. It was early to mid 2020 that I first found the Jinkies. And after a really deep personal contemplation, I really felt called to dive even deeper into the entire transmission, which I've done in a lot of different ways. And I've done the Jinkies Guides program, and I've been doing client sessions, and I was already loosely integrating it with my coaching before I was officially a Jinkies Guide. But I really love diving into all the different keys and all the different energies that come up within the entire transmission. So today we're going to be just focusing on the 41st Jinky because the transit of it starts tomorrow, and it signifies this new beginning energy that we can really tune into. And I'm extra excited about it because the 41st Jinky is also in my profile. It's in my radiance sphere. If you have it in your profile as well, let me know. I would love to hear that and be so interested. So to start with, just with basically what do I mean when I say the Jinky is in transit? So the sun transits through all 64 Jinkies through 1 year. And the Jinkies system, the whole Jinkies transmission and human design as well, is based off the foundation of the I Ching. And the I Ching is broken up into these 64 hexagrams. The 64 hexagrams are the foundation for the 64 Jinkies, which are also the hexagrams are also the foundation for the 64 gates in human design. So this I Ching, which is thousands and thousands of years old, this astrological system, broken up into 64 parts. And as the sun transits through these 64 hexagrams or Jinkies each year, the sun activates that energy while it's transiting through. A transit lasts 5 to 6 days. And while the sun is activating those different energies and those different essences, it's an opportunity for us to connect in at a more potent and intense level. All energy through the whole hexagrams and the whole Jinkies transmission is always available to us because it is reflected in the universe and reflected in us. But the sun transit is just, it's extra energized. There's extra juice for us to align with. And we can choose to move in alignment with that flow or to not. And sometimes a lot of people choose to force against it, whether that's a conscious decision or a unconscious decision. But with so in in the Jinkies and in human design as well, and in the I Ching as well, so there's a 64 bases. There's a 64 Jinkies, hexagrams, gates, and then there's also the 6 lines. And every hexagram, every Jinky is made up of a combination of these 6 lines. And the lines are either like a straight line, masculine energy, or a broken line, feminine energy. And these 6 lines as a whole have these different essences themselves. And the reason that the transit is 5 to 6 days is because like the transit is going through the lines as well, like from 1 to 6, and it's like 0.8 of a day. That's why sometimes it's 5 days and sometimes it's 6. But I just wanted to cover really basically what a transit means. And this transit of the 41st gene key begins tomorrow on the 22nd of Jan, and it will go for 6 days until the 27th of Jan. The 22nd to the 27th. I feel like I might have mucked up these numbers if I did. Okay, so that's what a transit is. And if you have, I will say that I am not an astrology expert. I have like an interest in astrology, but I'm definitely not an expert. So there's probably so much more detail and juice when it comes to transits, because that is only the transit of the sun. There's also transits of other planets and other things moving. So if you're interested in that, I can definitely point you in the direction of some people that really specialize in astrology, but I'm more focused on the individual Jinkies. And before we go further into the 41st Jinky, I really just want to take a moment to acknowledge and honor the entirety of the Jinkies transmission and its founder, Richard Rudd. And I love how Richard refers to himself as like the first student of the Jinkies. He really acknowledges that like this transmission flowed like through him, and he built it upon the foundations like of the I Ching and of human design, which he studied for a long period of time. And what I have to share about the 41st gene key with you now and with the gene keys overall is through my study of what he birthed into the world and what that subsequently sparked within my own contemplation and my own consciousness and the experience that I had with these energies and with these teachings. So I really want to acknowledge like Richard, and also like the teachers and everyone that is involved with like the gene keys with human designs and the I Ching and astrology and everything that this is built upon. Like I am in deep reverence to all my teachers, mentors, and everyone that has taught and mentored them. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that. Marilyn says, is the shadow and gift of every gene key is the shadow and gift of every gene key in our energy during the transition for us to contemplate? I think you mean for the transit. I think you mean instead of transition. So yeah. Okay. So when a gene key is in transit, that energy is amplified by the sun. And we can think of it as, so with the gene keys, I'll talk about this a little more later, but with the gene keys, there's 3 frequency bands: the shadow, the gift, and the city. And it's all the same gene key. It's all coming from the same energy. But the frequency that we are operating at will determine like what frequency of the key we are attuned to. So if we are attuning to a shadow frequency, then we'll attune like to an amplified shadow of the gene key in transit. But if we're attuning to a gift frequency, to that level of frequency, then we'll attune to the gift of that gene key. So yes, like it is all like the shadow, the gift, and the city, and our frequency will determine like what frequency we are in tune with that is being elevated. I hope that makes sense. I'll come back to that. Does it matter if I have it or not? No, it doesn't matter if you have it or not. So every gene key is like, so if you think of it like there's one energy, and that one energy fracted into 64 different expressions. So all 64 expressions of the gene keys came from the same source. It's just different fractal lines, different expressions. And we may have, just say we have the 41st and other Jinkies active in our profile, it's just like an extra potent dose for us to experience. But the Jinkies that we don't have active in our profile, we still have a connection to them because all Jinkies are connected to the source of the whole of where they came from. So whether we have a Jinky active in our profile or not, it still has an influence because it's connected to the collective and we have a connection to the collective. The Jinkies in our personal profile just gives us a map of how particular Jinkies influence certain realms of our life. I'll come back to more of that later, Marilyn. I want to talk about the 41st Jinky first. So for the 41st Jinky, the shadow is fantasy, the gift is anticipation, and the city is emanation. And those are just, like I was just saying, different frequency bands of the same essence, the same energy. And usually, like when we read the Jinkies book, and a lot of the time when the Jinkies are spoken about, it'll usually go in the order of like shadow, gift, city. But I really love to turn that around and look at the city first. And the city is essentially the divine essence, the fractal directly from source energy, like from the whole that all 64 fragments came from. The city is that divine essence. And when we look at the divine essence of emanation, it's about the energy that's emanating like from the source. And the 41st Jinky is a really special Jinky, which I'll talk a little bit more in a moment as well. So emanation is the energy being emanated from the source of creation, the source, the universe, God, whatever name you want to give it. And when we look at this energy that's being emanated, it's the start of the story. It's the start, like it's the beginning. And it's also the ending, because like all energy that is emanated needs to return to the source. So when we think about emanation as a city, like that is the divine essence, the start of the story, the beginning. And then that is the highest frequency. And then as we descend into earth, into our human form, the frequency has to decrease because our human bodies are not capable of holding pure source energy. Like we have limitations in our human body, and we can't hold like pure source energy like 100% flooding our body. So the frequency of emanation descends to earth and goes into the gift frequency. And the gift frequency is anticipation. And I really visualize this as like the source energy is the beginning and the end of the story, whatever our life story is. And then it's descending to earth. And here we have the gift of anticipation. And it's the gift of anticipation because we're connected to the beginning and ending of the story. We're just like we're descending down. So we are able to anticipate what will happen next in our story because we're connected to the beginning and the end. So we can attune to like the gap, the storyline between the gift and the city. And we're connected to this electromagnetic field that allows us to anticipate our own story and the story of others. And we can use this anticipation, this gift of anticipation, to contribute to human evolution. And this is one of like the contradictions and paradoxes as we move through these different frequencies and as we move through these different layers. Because if the story is already written, does anything we do actually make a difference? Does anything we do actually contribute to anything? But that is the point of the story, the point of how we are designed to contribute to this evolution and to this story. And the story will play out, and we may not have a lot of control over the story that is playing out, but we do get to contribute to the script, to the emotions, to the feeling that we experience as we move through our own stories and as we're a part of other stories as well. So that's the city emanation, the gift anticipation. And then when we're in this human realm, things can become distorted through lower frequencies. And this is when we become more disconnected from that divine energy that is of our essence. too deeply like into the primal energy disconnected from our source, and we move into this shadow frequency. And the shadow frequency here is fantasy. And fantasy is when like the gift of anticipation has become so distorted that we get lost in all the possible storylines, and we get lost in all these mental fantasies, these mental dreams of like this could happen and this could happen and this could happen, but there's no physical grounding to any of them, so none of them actually come to fruition. And these mental fantasies often lead to disappointment because our physical reality can never live up to these mental fantasies that we're projecting with resentment like onto our divine essence. So we can see here like that these are all like of the same energy. It's just an experience through different frequencies. And the dilemma here, so every Jinky has a dilemma. And the dilemma here is planning. And when you're in the lower frequency of fantasy, planning, we can have a tendency, especially those who have this active in their profile, but everyone can be exposed to this, to be in this to have this tendency to plan through the mind and to live in these fantasies in the mind rather than actually living through our story. And it's really becoming absent in life because we're living completely in our mind. And then we become addicted to those fantasies because our real life couldn't possibly measure up to these fantasies we're creating that do have truth in them because they're connected to the emanation. Like they are possible, but we need to move into a gift frequency, into the anticipation of what is available in our story and what is enriching to our story, as opposed to being disconnected from the human life that we actually get to live. And again, like there are so many paradoxes and contradictions as we move through these different frequency bands, and as we go from the low frequencies into these divine Siddhic frequencies, because like we can say that it's all in our mind. Like the things we're anticipating, it's easy to think, oh, that is just a mental fantasy. But when we're in the gift frequency, we are grounded in our physical body, and we have this core stability in our body and in our self-esteem as well, to be able to move through what we're anticipating and take our role in the story, even though sometimes it may be against these mental fantasies that we're creating and trying to project in the world. And time is experienced very differently at these different frequency levels. When we're in these mental fantasies, in any shadow frequency, time is this constricting force. And it's like, I'm running out of time. I have to do everything now. And we're very aware of our impending ending. And that comes from, again, being connected to the Siddhic level, but in a distorted way, because we're so aware that we will end in our current form one day, and that creates this pressure. And the 25th Jinky really talks about this with the shadow of constriction. It talks about like at a shadow collective level, we have such a dependence on time, and it creates this enormous like tension and pressure at a global level, like in this collective energy field. And with the 25th Jinky, like the Siddhi is universal love. It's like love is like the essence of divine source energy. So yeah, like we create this massive constriction with us in time, which is really relevant, like whenever we are in any shadow frequency. And that really shifts our experience of time. And because when we're connected to our gift frequency, which is really like activating for our creativity, we create more time. And that's really hard to understand at a logical level, especially in a shadow frequency. So I want you just to like allow paradoxes and contradictions to exist as you explore the Jinkies and as you explore your life as well, because there are things that won't make sense because you are a fragment of source energy. Like you're not going to make logical sense in everything that you do. So Marilyn says, anticipation of my story or the collectives. Anticipation is knowing what will happen in the future. Yeah, so both. So with the gift of anticipation, you are tuned in to the story of life. And we can look at this as like we are all characters on the stage of life. And throughout all life, there are these storylines that keep repeating themselves. And we can think of this like when we watch movies, when you're watching a movie that's like a rom-com or some other, whatever other genre, when you're watching, when you're really attuned to like this gift of anticipation, um, you probably know what's going to happen. And when we're watching a rom-com, like we know they're going to end up together. Like that's how general we're anticipating a happy ending because we're attuned to how that storyline plays out. And we can see that very clearly, like when we watch TV shows and movies and all of that. And then when we're out in the world living with people, we start to notice storylines playing out and we start to notice how the storyline that people are in and the likely ending or turning point that that will have. So for at a collective level, we can really anticipate that the world is like taking this turn and this will be amazing. This is what the world needs next for the evolution of the world. Definitely can be at a collective level, but it can also be in our own lives and like our clients, our friends, our family, and all of the other lives as well. Like we really tune into stories, like because life is just a story. Let me know if that makes sense, Marilyn, if you have any follow-up to that. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about like why this gene key, the 41st gene key in particular, is so special and why it represents the beginning and a new beginning. So all of the 64 gene keys, and like I talked about before, they are also the 64 like hexagrams and the 64 gates. All of them represent genetic coding, and all of the like genetic codes also form these codon rings. And again, I will say like the genetic side and the physicality of it is not like a specialty of mine. Like I understand the basis and the foundation of how it forms the gene keys, but they make up this genetic coding, and genetic codes in our body are made up of 4 base foundations, and the combination of those 4 base foundations. And if you have the Jinkies book, it talks about them in like 4 different letter options, and those letters can just be like a few or 1,000 or whatever. And those letters, those building blocks, are the instructions to our cells on what they need to do. They may be like build a new kidney, attack this thing that's a threat to the immune system, like whatever else it is. And this coding is in our body. And then the 41st gene key stands alone because it is the only gene key that represents the genetic coding that is like the start instructions. Because if we think about like all these coding in our body, like how does the body know to begin something? And that is because of the 41st gene key and the genetic coding that it represents. The 41st gene key is this genetic archetype that is like, it's like the key, it's the front door key, it's the signaling to start doing something. And that's why at this collective, like astrology, the level of like astrology and collective frequency, it's representing a beginning. Like, let's begin a new cycle, let's begin a new storyline. And it is the source of the story, and it's also the ending of the story. And when we look at the I Ching, they described it as decrease, and the story to that is that it's like decrease is because it's the beginning and the ending, and it's that paradox of the beginning and the ending. And like the visual is, you know, that image of that serpent, I don't know the actual name, but it's like the serpent is eating its own tail, and it's like this never ending thing. Whenever I saw that, like I've seen that in so many like movies and symbols places, and I never really got it. I was like, it just doesn't make sense to me. But contemplating this Jinky, like it really started to make sense that it's like the beginning is the end, and all things return home and all things return to this. So that's like the 41st gene key, like is this beginning. So when it comes to that energy being in transit now, like from tomorrow, like at a collective level, like it is signifying this new beginning. But of course, that doesn't match up with our calendar year, the standard calendar year, because Western society in many ways is really disconnected from the natural flow of nature. When we look at like the Chinese New Year, they like their new year is, I think, in a week or two's time. It's always on, like, I'm pretty sure it's always on a new moon, and it's after this transit because they're so much more deeply, all the Eastern world is so much more deeply connected to the natural flow of nature. And in the Western world, just in the way, like the calendar, and in so many ways that we're structured at a foundation level, it really disconnects us to the natural flow. So we can bring that new awareness in ourselves to bring us more into the flow of nature. So this 41st gene key, like the start codon, is within like every genetic sequence in our body. And when it comes to these like genetic sequences and the gene keys that we have active and that are all active within the collective, we are all like, our genetic coding is a mirror to the genetic coding, or just the coding, energetic coding of the universe. So the universe is reflected within us, and we are reflected within the universe. And I think it's so cool to think about this, because we think of like every creative impulse we have is communicated and connected to every cell within our body and every like energetic cell within the entire universe. And we are so connected collectively, like with people, but we really are disconnected from that in so many ways as well, because we're taught that we are separate and to be separate. But all the gene keys are these story codes, like of creation, and they all tell this story that is within us and within the world at large as well. Okay. So let's talk about attuning with the gift of anticipation for this new year. I'm just gonna nature's new year, but I'm just gonna call it the new year. So how can we attune to this gift of anticipation? And it really begins with practicing being in flow with nature rather than fighting against it. Because when we are in flow with nature, and when I say with nature, I mean with things that feel natural, with things that are natural to us, when we are in that flow, like we are naturally aligned with the storyline that we are most designed to be living out and that we are going to thrive in. Because as humans, like we are prosperous at our essence. And when we are in line with nature, when we are attuned to nature, we are naturally in alignment with that energy. And when we're fighting against it, that's when things feel hard. That's when things feel like we either resolve to it that there's no point, or we keep fighting and we'll eventually burn ourselves out. And when it comes to also being in the flow with nature, there are many cycles within nature. There are cycles within us, like our menstrual cycle. There are cycles, the seasons. You know, we're not designed to live the same way in summer as we do in winter. There are cycles in, you know, like our age cycles. There are cycles in like the times of the day. There are so many cycles, and everything in nature operates in a cycle, operates in this cycle of birth, like we can see like the starting point of like birth, increase, decline, death, rebirth, and it keeps going in this cycle. And so often, like, it's like we want to stay on the high because that's what we're conditioned to think that we should want. So we fight and fight and fight, and then we burn out, and then we get out of attunement with that cycle. And sometimes it can take some work or a lot of like inner adjustments to get back in sync with that cycle. And I like remember that you internally is a reflection of the universe, and the universe is a reflection of you. So your inner cycles are a reflection of the cycles in the world. And sometimes they can feel a little out of alignment. Like if we are in like an inner winter, if we're like bleeding in our cycle and it's like summer outside, sometimes that can feel like a bit of a misalignment. But for me personally, like I always tune into my inner cycles before the outer cycles, because I know that my inner cycles are a reflection of my universe, of the world we live in. And sometimes it can, you know, been conditioned collectively to think that seeing ourselves as the center of the universe is this really like conceited, selfish thing to think, but you are the center of your universe. You are the center of your storyline, and you can honor yourself in your cycle first. You are so connected like to the collective, and the collective is connected to you, and you will always be reflected in the collective, and the collective will always be reflected in you. And this is so important to remember. If we ever feel like, sometimes when we go on this journey of like descending or awakening, or how, like, whatever wording you've used to describe it, we can feel so disconnected, like no one gets me, I have no place, like I don't know my people. But just always remember that you are a magical reflection of the universe, and there are people that are part of your fractal lines that are just so excited to meet you, and they're already connected to you through this collective connection that we have. And again, when we are in alignment with our own storyline, we will naturally cross paths with those people. I want to talk a little bit about the Jinkies in general, especially for those that this may be your first introduction, or even if it's not, the way I describe it might elicit some other activation in you. So the Jinkies are, there's 64 Jinkies, which are based on the foundation of the 64 hexagrams in the I Ching, like I said at the beginning. And so these 64 Jinkies are like the 64 different archetypes or different story codes of creation and creativity in the world. And when we are born, from the moment we are conceived, actually we start to have our energetic imprinting. And this is from the time of conception, there is an imprinting, and then there's another imprinting 88 days before we are born, and then there is like the final imprinting the moment we emerge into the world, when we are birthed into the world. So all these imprinting times, there's different like astrological things happening, like the positioning of the sun and the planets and whatever else. All of this is having an imprint on us and holographically embedding codes within our DNA that we are birthed to in the world. And our individual coding has our shadow frequency, like our shadow patterns when we engage with lower frequencies, our gift coding, and our acidic coding. Our divine essence is encoded within us the moment we are conceived and born into the world. And through this coding, we carry conditioning that wasn't ours, that wasn't a part of our lived experience, because it was encoded from the moment we were born, before we had any lived experience. And this coding can come from karma, from like past life karma, just from universal karma, from ancestral trauma, from like trauma in our lineage line, from our ancestors, and from the collective as well. So there's all these different codes within us. And if we only attune to shadow level frequencies, then we will behave in a really reactive way that is acting out all of these shadow patterns. And we need to have an insight and breakthrough to be able to move into these gift frequencies, where we are living with our creative gifts and expressing our creative gifts into the world, being fueled and connected with our acidic nature, which we were encoded with as well. And all of that, like the gift and the acidic nature, is our natural state of being. But we came in with trauma. We came in with things to decondition from. And the deconditioning is the work. It's not about changing ourselves to something that we are not. It's about removing these layers and these fogs around us that came from things we were born with, or through things that happened through our lived experience as well, to return back to our natural state. And this is how we can use the Jinkies to really enrich our experience of 2022 and our whole life at large as well, is using the Jinkies. Your Jinkies profile gives you the map of your imprinting through different realms of your life and the different spheres. So you'll see at the top of your profile, you have your life's work, Then to the side, you'll have your evolution. At the bottom, you'll have your purpose. And the life's work is like the tip of the iceberg of how you interact with the external world. And then the purpose at the bottom is like what balances all of your profile, your purpose, who you are designed to be at your very core. And everything else in the profile is a map through different realms, different parts of your life and different parts of your imprinting as well. And as you move through these, you can become more aware of these shadow patterns that you may be playing out in your life, and also your positioning within the collective as well. And as you embrace these shadow patterns as part of yourself, instead of trying to shun them and shame them, you crack through them and you allow the gift frequency to emanate from them. So that's just a very basic introduction to what the Jinkies are. And I have a whole podcast chapter on my podcast, Depths of Creation, going more into the Jinkies, so you can have a listen to that, or you can send me a message as well, and I can tell you more about the Jinkies, like as a whole transmission if you're interested. But I want to go a little bit more into the shadow of fantasy with the 41st Jinky. So within every shadow, there is a gift. Within every challenge, there is a gift. This is one of the core teachings of the Jinkies. And I've heard Richard Rudd say it probably about 1,000 times. Within every shadow, there is a gift. And when we look at the shadow of fantasy, and this is what I love about the Jinkies as well. It's like when we rise, we go into our depth. And when we go into our depth, we rise. It's like the beginning is the ending. It doesn't matter if we look at ascending up or descending down, we'll always arrive at the same place, which is like a paradox within itself. So when we look at going into the fantasy, instead of like going up, like from fantasy to gift, like let's look at going from like fantasy deeper into the fantasy. At the core of the fantasy, there is this core yearning for something. We wouldn't have these mental fantasies if they weren't being fueled by something that we deeply desired. And sometimes our idea of what that desire is can be really distorted, especially if we're living in these lower frequencies. So sometimes it can take some space to gain that clarity on what this core yearning is actually, what it is actually, and how we can fulfill that desire and that yearning in a different way that doesn't project these mental fantasies that aren't really aligned with our storyline. So if you're really like aligning with this 41st Jinky, and again, it doesn't matter if it's in your profile or not, if you feel you have all of these like mental fantasies that you get lost in, really just take a moment of like solitude and silence and stillness and get to the core of them. Like, what is the core yearning that is fueling these? And can you connect with the essence of that yearning in a different way? Can you let it rise into a gift frequency? And it doesn't matter how you do that. It's about being with it and letting it move through your own body and your own wisdom. In the Jinkies book, Richard shares that desire is the root of fantasy. And in the book, desire is a shadow frequency. And when you hear me use the word desire, I have reclaimed it in a different way. And when I talk about desire, I feel like it's just natural for me to use that in a positive connotation, like as a synonym for the core yearning. But desire can be at a shadow level when it's not a true desire, when it's not a truly aligned desire. It's more of a, I think I should want that desire. So I just wanted to distinguish between that. So really start to tune into your desires below the surface. Follow it, go deeper, go deeper, go deeper, go into your depth, and when you're at the core of that core yearning, that core desire, you can feel into its infinite expressions, and mentally you've attached to one of them. And that's what is the mental fantasy, an attachment to one possible expression of that core yearning. So can you just gently, allow yourself to see that, and then just start to loosen your grip? Are you open and willing to this core yearning being fulfilled in a different way than your mind has fixated on it needing to be experienced in the world? You have such a vast and deep inner world. And when you like loosen your grip on attaching to only parts of it, you can then experience so much more like enrichment and depth in your outer world. And this is why the dilemma is planning, because the mind is fixated to one plan. Can we have a plan but hold lightly to the plan and let the plan flow and evolve as we move through the story, and acknowledging that we don't know everything that we're going to know now, like at the point of every story, at the point of like every point in our story. So like there may be a key point of knowledge that we don't know right now that is really going to change how we play, how things play out. But if we're attaching to it needing to play out in a certain way from start to finish now, then we're not allowing ourselves to evolve with our natural evolution. We're forcing against our own flow. So I really invite you to really tune into your yearning and your story and where you are now in your story, and being where you are now, and then letting your story lead you, that city of emanation. Like let the pull of that story and the energy of that pull lead you. And as you decondition, as you dissolve the fog and crack open like the shell or the hardness that these shadow patterns have been creating, clarity will be natural and clarity will naturally flow. You don't need to force this process. You don't need to force this process. And the teachings that underpin the entire system of the Jinkies is the art of contemplation. And the art of contemplation includes like gentle contemplation, gentleness, patient, and insight. And when we practice all of these things, when we practice gentleness, like being soft and gentle with ourselves, and being patient, and like softening that constriction from our attachment to time, when we bring that in, like the insights naturally drop in, and then insights naturally lead to breakthroughs, and the breakthroughs naturally crack open our shadow patterns and bring us into these gift frequencies where we can express those creative attributes into the world. And through all of that, we're always connected to the Siddhic frequency. We're always attuned to some degree to that Siddhic state, although we're likely not going to experience it in its fullness in our human form. We are still connected to it. So that is what I have to share with you today about the 41st Jinky. And I do want to take a moment to just share with you what is coming up if you want to work with me further to explore your own Jinkies and to explore the Jinkies in whole. And if you have any questions about anything I've shared, please comment. I would love to answer your questions. So what is coming up? I have 2 group programs that are coming up. The first one is your attraction frequency. And this is a really potent 2-week attunement. And it begins in 1 week on the 28th of Jan. So through the 2-week attunement of your attraction frequency, we will have 4 live attunement calls, and we will go very deeply into 3 different spheres within your profile that are deeply and very intimately linked to how you attract people into your life. And this is attracting people in business, your clients, your maybe colleagues. Our life is enriched through the people that we are connected with, and really diving into these 3 different spheres that are within this attunement program will really connect you with your people and the shadow patterns that are preventing your connection with your people. And what I love about this program is that there will be training elements where I will go through like what that sphere means, the different lines like you're placing within the collective with the lines, and everyone that joins, like we will dive into your specific Jinkies as well that you have active. So we're going to really dive into the radiance of your auric field. We're going to really awaken the codes of your attractor field, and then deeply attune you to your fractal line to have that magical synchronicity. So that the investment for that program is 222 Australian dollars for the 2 weeks. And there's an intimacy upgrade as well that is 444. That includes 3 weeks private Voxer coaching with me. There are payment plans available if you reach out. So that's the first program that starts just in 1 week. And at the moment on my website, it does still have the pre-launch there, and I'm going to change it maybe in about an hour. So if you go there before then, you'll get it at the pre-launch, which is like a third of that. I think less than a third actually. So the next program is your creative codes. This is an 8-week deep dive into your activation sequence. Your activation sequence in your Jinkies profile it contains 4 spheres, so 4 different Jinkies for you. And it makes up about 70% of who you are at an imprint level, and it really allows you to ground deeply in your physicality and create core stability that allows you that groundedness to then go into the emotional world and the service world of the 2 next sequences. You will be guided through your primary challenge, like your first trigger point, to your inner wisdom, your insights, and your breakthroughs. And this is going to be such an amazing group 8-week program. So there will be 4 training transmissions, and then there will be 4 open deep dive calls, and they will like alternate between each week. So we will go very, very deeply into your specific Jinkies that you have active in your profile and everyone else in the program, and how they present in your life. And there will be more like integration, coaching, and understanding, and then group support for those entire 8 weeks as well. And that also includes the source material. So I will give you access to I'll create your account with access to the activation sequence that the Jinkies organization offers, which just has a lot of like all the source material. I don't want to gatekeep that from you. But you'll get so much extra guidance on top of that. And, there is a lot in that. So I will kind of make a list of like, these are the most potent things to look at, to watch, to listen to, and everything else you'll have if you want to go deeper. And you'll have continued access to the source material and everything that we cover as well. So the investment for this is 599 Australian dollars again. If you join before the 13th of February, the full price is 888, and we begin on the 22nd of Feb, so in a month's time. And there are payment plans available if you reach out on the website. I have a 2-month payment plan there already. If you want an extended payment plan, all you need to do is reach out to me. And again, it has the pre-launch is there at the moment. So if you join like in the next hour, you'll get a more discounted rate. If you have any questions about either of those group programs, please reach out to me. And if you would like more one-on-one guidance, my highest level offer is called Rapture. And this is an 8-month deep dive, like one-on-one, you and me going deeply through your entire profile and all the integration and everything that comes up with that. There are details on my website, but you can reach out if you want to chat to that. That offer is by application only. And at the moment it is $777 per month or $5,555 if you pay upfront, and that price will likely be increasing soon. I have 1 spot open for it at the moment, so reach out if you want to chat more about that. If you want more of like a once-off overview of your profile or guidance call, there's details on my website, but you can reach out. And in my Space to Create membership, I have about 10 masterclasses planned that I will be teaching and running in there very soon. So that is only $39 a month if you want a more accessible offer. And the Jinkies book club that I'm running also starts next week. So you can reach out to me about that if you're interested as well. So I know that's kind of a lot, but if you have any questions on where like the best place for you to start will be, send me a message as well. I would so love to chat with you about all of this because I just love the Jinkies transmission as a whole. And I love connecting women deeper into their creativity, into their depth, and into the service and prosperity that they are here and designed to be living in the world, and also through their own inner journey and inner storyline as well. So thank you so much for being here. For everyone, whether you're here right now live with me or if you're on the replay as well, thank you. Sending you so much love.